Hello everyone, it's Danny. Welcome to the greenhouse. Thanks for clicking on this video. And if you're new, happy to have you. So today's video, I'm going to talk about Oncidium and Oncidium intergeneric orchid care because it is not the same as Phalaenopsis care. Some people give just general orchid care advice, and most of the time they are talking about Phalaenopsis, and it is completely different. In front of me I have Oncidium Eye Candy Pinky in full bloom, and she's beautiful. So I'm just going to go into how often I water them, what I have them potted in, the media, and how much light they receive. Now, please keep in mind, everybody's growing environment is different. I grow here in a greenhouse, but I did grow these in my home, which I think if you have enough light in your home, these are good house plants. So let's get into this video. So first off, how do you know if you have an Oncidium orchid? Well, Oncidiums have pseudobulbs, and that's what these are right here. And Oncidiums are leafy, unlike a Phalaenopsis, which you can see right there. And it's a good view of how different these two orchids look. So on these Oncidiums, you have your pseudobulbs. And your pseudobulbs is what stores water and nutrients for the orchid. But that's kind of deceiving because these Oncidiums enjoy being wet. So those pseudobulbs can kind of trick you. Those are there as a lifeline in case the orchid does go through a drought period. It has extra nutrients and water stored up to survive. So that's why Oncidiums have these pseudobulbs. So here is another Oncidium type. And if you see, these pseudobulbs are longer and more narrow. But do you see how plump they are? Oh, this is a good example. See how plump this one is? And you see the wrinkles. So that means that these ones are very hydrated, and that's what you want on your Oncidium. This is what new growth looks like right here. You see that new growth? And this is where it comes out. Is on the side. And that new growth, in my experience, does grow quite fast. Now, I'm going to touch on the subject on what I believe makes Oncidiums rebloom for you. I don't believe that they need a temperature drop like your Phalaenopsis do to promote a bloom spike. I believe that they are like a Cattleya and need sufficient enough light to rebloom. That's why I said if you have really good lighting in your house, I think these make great house plants. My Oncidiums get just as much light as my Cattleyas do. And I don't believe there is a blooming season for the ones I have anyways, because they have bloomed at all times of the year. Spring, summer, fall, and winter. They rebloom once the growth is mature. Once the growth is mature, that new growth will bloom. It will create a flower spike for you. And the flower spike on Oncidiums come out from right here. you'll see a flower spike pop up right here. Actually, I have an example for you. This Oncidium type is spiking right now for the third time since I've had it. There's a flower spike, and you can see where it's coming out from. Right there. And this is also a great example because of Oncidiums not having blooming seasons, because this one has been throwing spikes for me since I've had it. As soon as a new growth matures and I see that pseudobulb right here, a few weeks later I'm seeing a new flower spike. So give your Oncidium bright light. I say if you're growing inside your home, I think your Oncidiums would be happy with some morning sunlight. Some morning sunlight. Or if you have a place in your home that gets all day bright and direct light, I think they'll be very happy. Here's another new growth right here, and that pseudobulb will start showing itself soon, and then I'll be looking for a flower spike. Now, Oncidiums, like I said at the beginning, enjoy being wet, their roots. Don't let your Oncidium go bone dry. Now, if you're growing in a home, it's going to be different than growing maybe outside, like if you live in Florida, versus growing in a greenhouse. Each environment, your media in your orchid pot is going to dry out either faster or slower. But my one word of advice for that is don't let that go bone dry. Because then your pseudobulb, your orchid will start taking nutrients and water from your pseudobulb, and it can become very wrinkly. And once it does that, it's not very appealing to the eye. So I don't let them go bone dry. I keep the media moist. As soon as I feel that top layer kind of dry, I water it. So here in the greenhouse, that means I probably water my Oncidiums twice a week. Twice a week. Now, the fertilizing routine I have for them is I fertilize once every other watering, and I use Epsom salt that you can just buy at a grocery store, and I use a 20-20-20 fertilizer. These orchids are thirsty and heavy drinkers, heavy feeders. They enjoy it tremendously. And if you give them that nutrients, that new growth will start. You'll be amazed at your new growth. See if I can find a new growth on this one. So here's a new growth right now. You can kind of see that pseudobulb is starting to show itself. And I will soon have a flower spike out of that new pseudobulb. Now, I do use moss on most of my Oncidiums. I believe I have one Oncidium in bark, which is this one. And I do have to water this one a lot more often. Probably every other day. So I would suggest sphagnum moss as your media. As some of you might know, I enjoy growing most of my collection in clay pots, terracotta pots. And the reason being is because I can be an overwaterer, and that terracotta breathes and the media dries out faster. So if you are heavy-handed on the watering, I would suggest terracotta. Some people don't like it at all. It's really just a preference for you and your environment. What happens when your Oncidium goes dehydrated or doesn't have enough humidity is you get accordion leaves. And that's what this crinkling is. You see that? Now that doesn't mean your orchid's gonna die or anything. And it doesn't, as you can see here, it did not affect that growth or that pseudobulb. It just means at the time these leaves were growing and forming and pushing up, the orchid was dehydrated some sort of way. So if you get an orchid like this, maybe through ordering through the mail or something, and you see accordion leaves on your oncidium, don't be alarmed. It's just when those were growing, it was not receiving adequate enough moisture or humidity to make it happy. Here is cute little lava burst. And she is growing in a clay pot, terracotta pot. These tend to be hardy plants, I believe. This one was just recently sick. I believe it had a bacterial infection. I did the proper steps to get rid of it. And the whole time, this orchid was throwing up spikes for me and promoting and growing beautiful little blooms. So I believe they are one of the hardiest orchids out there. They are one of my favorite because of that. I believe they're easy bloomers, like I said, if you give them that light, that fertilizer, and keep their media moist. And last but not least is airflow. I say this quite often. You want to make sure your orchids, all of them, have sufficient airflow. If you're growing inside the home, turn your ceiling fans on, point a fan in their direction. These plants in the wild are attached to trees, and they're always receiving Mother Nature's wind and breeze. So that airflow is going to help reduce the chances of any new growth happening to rot. And I have had that a couple times. So make sure you have sufficient airflow for your oncidiums. I hope this helps. Happy growing, everybody. Till next time.